Ignition sequence starts.
Good morning, and welcome to a look inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room, where the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers is busy keeping tabs on space station systems and assisting the Expedition 65 crew members as they finish today's tasks with an eye on a mostly off-duty weekend to come. Commander Aki Hoshide and his crewmates have been digging into the deliveries on a cargo ship that arrived last week, breaking the seal on new experiments ranging from the interaction of microbes and their hosts to advances in the treatment of kidney stones.
Houston Station on Space to Ground.
Welcome to Space to Ground. I'm Sandra Jones. This week, a cargo dragon arrived to the space station, bringing with it a plethora of new science, and preps are underway for upcoming spacewalks. On Saturday, June 5th, the 22nd contracted SpaceX Dragon cargo spacecraft docked to the International Space Station. NASA astronauts Shane Kimbrough and Megan MacArthur monitored docking operations of the spacecraft. CRS-22 launched on Thursday, June 3rd from Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, carrying with it science experiments, cargo, and supplies. Following the arrival of the spacecraft, the crew has been busy unloading the cargo dragon and diving into the science on board. Among the many experiments on board, one payload is the understanding of microgravity on animal-microbe interactions, or UMAMI. This experiment examines the effects of spaceflight on the molecular and chemical interactions between beneficial microbes and their animal hosts. Millions of people worldwide suffer from chronic kidney disease. The arrival of the Kidney Cells 2 investigation will use a three-dimensional kidney cell model to study the effects of microgravity on the formation of microcrystals in kidney tubules. Results could lead to better treatments for conditions such as kidney stones. Flight engineer Shane Kimbrough configured the lyophilization 2 in microgravity investigation, which will examine gravity's effect on freeze-dried materials. This examination could result in improved freeze-drying processes for pharmaceutical or other industries. A new series of NanoRacks CubeSats were installed to the slide table deployer of the Kibo module. One of the CubeSats, RamSat, is an educational mission and will use multispectral and near-infrared cameras to study the effects of large-scale disturbances such as forest fires. To learn more about these new investigations and more, head to nasa.gov/ISS-science. Also on board Dragon were the new ISS Rollout Solar Arrays, or IROSAs, which will be installed during a pair of spacewalks later this month. On Wednesday, June 16th, NASA astronaut Shane Kimbrough and European Space Agency astronaut Thomas Pesquet will venture outside the space station's hatch to install the first IROSA solar array on the P6 truss for the 2B channel power system. We'll be covering the entire spacewalk live, and you can tune in beginning at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time. But before the spacewalking duo heads out into the vacuum of space, you can learn more about this upcoming spacewalking series during the EVA preview briefing this Monday, June 14th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And that's Space to Ground for this week. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week.
While spacewalkers Shane Kimbrough and Thomas Pesquet spent time on spacewalk prep this week, the truth is preparations for a spacewalk actually begin long before the crew members even launch. In this demonstration video, astronaut Ricky Arnold shares some of the training astronauts get on the ground to be ready to walk in space.
Welcome to the Quest airlock on the International Space Station. I'm Ricky Arnold, Expedition 56 flight engineer from NASA. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, extravehicular activity, or EVA. Going out on an EVA or a spacewalk has been one of the most amazing experiences of my life. But it's also one of the most complicated and dangerous things we do during human spaceflight. There's a lot of equipment to prepare and maintain, and we do months of training to make each EVA a success. If you think it sounds complicated, you should see all of it in action. Let's start with training and how we get ready for a spacewalk.
Space is an extreme environment that presents many hazards. If we're going to go outside the safety of the ISS, we have to be prepared. That's why EVAs are designed with safety as the utmost priority. We astronauts spend a lot of time in the classroom, just like you are now, learning about the hardware we'll be using and the specific parts of the space station we'll be working on. Then we get to go spend a lot of time training in NASA's giant pool, called the Neutral Buoyancy Lab, or NBL. Since it's impossible to simulate microgravity on Earth, the next best option is water. 6.2 million gallons of it. The NBL is 40 feet deep, 202 feet in length, and 102 feet in width. A lot of room to have a full-scale working model of the ISS, which we need for practicing our EVA maneuvers and assigned tasks. We get suited up and weighted so that we're neutrally buoyant in the water, so we don't sink to the bottom and we don't float to the surface. It's a great way to simulate the microgravity we'll be experiencing. We do several dress rehearsals of the EVA before we launch. This gives us the opportunity to prepare for any anomalies that may occur. We spend at least 5 hours practicing the NBL for every 1 hour planned for the spacewalk, so we are very well prepared to execute the EVAs once we are in orbit. Once we are up in orbit, the EVA preparation continues. First, we must perform a pre-breathe protocol to displace the nitrogen in our tissues and help prevent a condition called decompression sickness. During pre-breathe, we breathe 100% pure oxygen and do some light exercise to help purge the nitrogen from our bodies. During pre-breathe, we will also don our extravehicular mobility unit, or EMU. This is a fancy name for a spacesuit. The spacesuit is basically its own spacecraft, shaped like a human. There is usually a red stripe on the leg of one astronaut, but not the other, so the ground can tell who is who. To ensure our safety at all times, we are always aware of our safety tethers and where we are in relation to our spacewalking buddy.
Hey, buddy.
There's a fellow crew member called the IB, the intervehicular crew, on the inside of the airlock, watching and communicating with us as the EVA progresses. We are also prepared for several contingencies should they occur. First, we are trained on the use of a jetpack that can be used to maneuver in the event of an emergency rescue. It's called a SAFER, or Simplified Aid for EVA Rescue. The view during an EVA is magnificent. It's beautiful out there. It's also extremely dangerous, but our months of preparation and all of those dedicated people working on the ground, working around the clock, ensure we are safe as possible when we work outside the ISS. EVAs have allowed us to build and maintain the ISS, repair mission-critical hardware, investigate malfunctions, install new hardware, and the view, unbelievable. See you next time.
In a few minutes, we'll see Ricky Arnold again with a detailed review of the spacesuits the astronauts wear when they exit the vehicle. The laboratories at the International Space Station provide a setting for scientists to do experiments that take the force of gravity out of the equation. For example, there's an experiment that's studying sediments of quartz and clay and focusing on the forces between particles that cluster together. Did you ever see a cancer experiment up close? You're about to. In 2018, astronaut Serena Aunen-Chancellor turned on a camera while working with the Angie-X cancer therapy experiment in the International Space Station's Destiny Laboratory module, and gave us a look as she grew and examined endothelial cells, which are important in the human body's blood supply system.
Hey, good morning and welcome to ISS. Today I am working on the Angie-X cancer trials up here on ISS. We've actually spent quite a bit of time working on this. And what we're looking at here is something called an endothelial cell. And an endothelial cell, you find these cells in every blood vessel in your body. And so people wonder why we're growing these cells up on ISS. And scientists believe that cells in the body grow very similar up here on ISS. A lot of times scientists try and grow these endothelial cells in the ground and they don't live for very long. And they think for some reason they grow better up here in space. And that's one of the things we're testing on orbit here. And you can see some of these cells right here on the computer. So why is this important? Well, endothelial cells help form blood supply. And tumors need blood supply to get bigger and bigger. And all of us have had someone impacted by cancer, whether it's a family member or a friend. And so we're always thinking, how can we fight this cancer? Well, one thing we're looking at is, can we grow these cells on orbit to test new cancer drugs to prevent that blood supply from growing? And if we can stop that tumor blood supply from growing, then we can help beat that cancer. So that's just one of the science experiments we're looking at here on the space station. See where all the cells live in their biocell habitat. And when we're done working with them, we put them in something called Sable 2, which is up in the ceiling for ISS. And it feels all nice and warm and comfortable because it's just like the temperature of the human body. And so we let the cells live and grow there, and we've had them for almost 2 months now up here on ISS. We feed them, we give them nutrients, and they basically live. They're like miniature crew members living with us. So we're going to this new biocell, which is Delta 7. And these biocells here have been treated with varying levels of a cancer chemotherapy drug that is being tested out here on ISS. And so we are looking at the cells, the researchers look at the images that I take for them on the microscope to see how well that drug is impacting the connection between those endothelial cells to see if it will stop this tumor blood supply from growing. Make sure that's level.
Main positions are Forest and Spaceflight are at the leftmost position for the first image.
And you can see some of these tubule formations here also.
Good spot.
Yeah, I agree, it's a good spot. You do see definitely some of the tubule formations here and some of the gaps in between the cells.
Really good representation of both of those. That's a really good spot.
The Cargo Dragon spacecraft that arrived last week is part of the growing commercial space economy, which the International Space Station has been encouraging for more than 20 years now. The expansion of the commercial use of space not only fosters the growth of those companies, but it's aiding NASA as it continues to explore and discover what's out there beyond low Earth orbit.
Those striving to develop their products and conduct research beyond Earth's atmosphere are seeing their visions come to life through the International Space Station National Lab and partnerships with NASA. NASA, in turn, is gaining new resources to aid in its mission of exploration and discovery. Thanks to these partnerships, the world is benefiting from the ingenuity of those who are taking their ideas to gravity's edge. From transportation to satellite deployment to in-space research, a vibrant commercial space economy has been developing, and its value now exceeds $345 billion. Mike Reed is the manager of the ISS Business and Economic Development Office at Johnson Space Center. He explains some of the benefits of NASA investing in the commercial economy in space. Commercialization of low Earth orbit frees up resources NASA needs to continue its exploration of space. Even as NASA prepares to return to the Moon, go to Mars, and continues engaging with other space missions, we'll always need a platform in low Earth orbit. That platform enables crew training, advanced systems development, and fundamental and applied research. But expanding use of the space station to commercial companies enables a new market. By having the commercial sector join us, we can continue our space exploration while providing access to a platform that helps create jobs, build revenues, and ultimately create many new products that are beneficial to people on Earth. In terms of research, many companies are making use of the ISS U.S. National Laboratory to run their research and technology development investigations in microgravity. They include well-known corporations like Procter & Gamble, who have used the station to study colloids with a goal of improving the quality and lifespan of their products, such as shampoo and laundry fabric softener. Merck, the multinational pharmaceutical company, uses the National Lab to study the growth properties of three-dimensional protein crystals. Their work could lead to more effective delivery systems for cancer treatments. Even companies not as well known right now are seeing big dividends coming from their research. Lam Division, for example, is using the microgravity conditions on the station to advance the development for treating the effects of retinal degeneration, with the goal of restoring the vision of those people affected by it. In addition to research opportunities, the space station contributes to expanding the space economy in other ways. Reed explains, the capabilities of launch providers such as SpaceX and Northrop Grumman have grown dramatically over the last decade. The cost of placing cargo into orbit has dropped dramatically, which opens up the space marketplace to many more non-governmental entities who simply could not afford the costs of reaching space before. Now, SpaceX has brought astronauts to the station from American soil for the first time since 2011, and the first time ever on a privately owned launch system. The Commercial Crew Program provides a huge long-term benefit for both private companies and NASA. Today, thanks in part to the space station, commercial and other non-governmental entities are entering the space economy in significant numbers. What these new partnerships can accomplish together will drive the in-space marketplace and NASA's grandest missions to new heights, as well as improving quality of life for people on Earth. For more science and research from the International Space Station, go to www.nasa.gov/ISS-science. To discover more about the space on, around, and beyond our planet, visit science.nasa.gov.
When astronauts go outside the International Space Station, as Shane Kimbrough and Thomas Pesquet will do next week, they are wearing what amounts to a human-shaped spaceship. In this demonstration video, astronaut Ricky Arnold gives us a tour of the critical parts of the spacesuits that keep astronauts safe as they work in the harsh environment of space.
So we are standing in the Quest airlock, which is divided into two parts. We have the equipment lock and we have the crew lock. This equipment lock has a hatch right here that closes, and the crew lock has another hatch. The EMU, or the Extravehicular Mobility Unit, is our spacesuit, and it's divided roughly into two parts. We have the hard upper torso, which is almost like a turtle shell. It's a hard fiberglass shell, and then we also have the lower torso assembly. These spacesuits are our own little spacecraft, and they have everything you need to keep you alive out in space for 7 to 8 hours, maybe even longer, depending on how hard you're working. The only thing that they do not have, and they have radios, it has oxygen, it has carbon dioxide scrubbing, it has temperature control, it has everything you need except for one thing. a restroom. And so when we get ready for our EVA, the first thing we put on in the morning is a diaper. And that's our first layer. Then over the diaper, we put on a pair of long johns, and that's to keep our arms and legs from getting scraped up. It also provides a little bit of wicking in case you're getting really hot and sweaty. The next layer is our liquid cooling garment. And the LCVG has little tubes running through it, which allow water to circulate inside the LCVG to provide cooling when we're outside working really hard. So we've got the diaper, we got long johns, we got the LCVG, and then we're going to wear our spacesuit. 7 layers from the bladder on the inside, which maintains pressure, and that's a rubberized bladder, all the way out to the white layer on the outside. The crew member inside the spacesuit is also wearing this, what we call a Snoopy cap. It's a communications cap. We have a radio, so we can talk to not only to Houston, but we can talk to people on the space station and to each other. So we wear this communication cap inside the helmet. Also, another key component of the EMU or a spacesuit is the helmet. You can see the helmet has a gold visor, which protects us from the rays of the sun that we can bring down. It's pretty bright out there, and this gold visor helps reflect the rays of the sun so we can actually see and operate in daylight. At nighttime, we can raise this visor up, gives us a clearer view, and additionally, we have helmet lights built into the helmet. On top of the helmet, we also have a television camera, so the ground is able to watch us while we work through these TV cameras. The work is really all done with hands, and so our gloves are really our most important piece of equipment in order for us to work outside. And one of the real challenges of a spacewalk is you have this heavy gloved hand, which is inflated, so it wants to stay like it's blown up like a balloon. But we walk by grabbing onto handrails and making our way along the ISS. So every time you move your hand, you're fighting against a balloon that wants to inflate. And then on top of that, all of our equipment is based on using your hands too. So after 6.5, 7 hours of kind of fighting against this glove, it's a really long day, and your hands are probably the thing that are most exhausted after 7 hours out on an EVA. Well, we're going out to work. You probably saw me move this mini workstation. The way we carry our tools is on a mini workstation, which is carried on the front. Every single tool we use is tethered to us. We do not want to accidentally create satellites. Our primary way of remaining attached to the ISS, if we're not using our hands, are these waist tethers. And you can see they just have a big hook. They go around a rail or anything else on the ISS and latch on, and it actually has a locking mechanism as well to hold us nice and tight. So we always want to have one of these attached if we're not holding on with our hands as well. The back of the EMU has our life support system. The life support system contains all the equipment we need, from a UHF radio down to the oxygen tanks that provide primary oxygen. One of the challenges inside this sealed environment, it's very easy to carry our own oxygen with us, but we generate a lot of carbon dioxide, particularly when we're out there working very hard. So to combat that and to deal with that, we have these canisters called Medox canisters, which are just silver oxide. They are carried in the backpack along with a very large battery, which provides all the electricity for us. I don't have a battery here to show you today because we're in the process of charging them. We're about a month out from doing a spacewalk, and we've already started getting ready for that. So this Medox canister is able to remove about 7 to 8 hours of carbon dioxide that a human can generate inside the spacesuit. EVAs have allowed us to build and maintain the ISS, repair mission-critical hardware, investigate malfunctions, install new hardware, and the view, unbelievable. See you next time.
Spending a long mission looking out the windows of the International Space Station, 250 miles above the Earth, tends to make astronauts think a bit differently about the home planet. NASA astronaut Anne McClain has had that experience. Her perception of Earth was particularly changed by the experience of her first spacewalk.
On the day of the spacewalks, I remember I was over the hatch and they said to open the hatch, and so I opened it up and it was daytime. And the only thing I could look at was straight down at the Earth. And for 10 minutes, I just watched the Earth going by below me, and the only thing separating it was just my visor. And it was really incredible. And then we exited. They said go ahead and exit the space station. And I remember that was the first time I really got the sensation that I was being pulled by gravity. I was close to Earth, and I was very reliant on physics at that moment because I was holding onto the space station with one hand, and my feet were dangling. I remember, not just through my visor, but looking down, and you just see feet and then Earth, and you're holding onto the space station, and it was just incredible. Everything looked so large. But again, the most significant realization to me was looking out and realizing not how far I was from Earth, but how close I was to Earth and how connected I was to Earth, and how, we on the space station plus everybody on Earth and this planet is actually so small compared to this vastness of outer space. We have a small amount of gravity that keeps us in orbit around the Earth. And I was keenly aware that Earth was holding on to us. We were attached to Earth. What was amazing to me was looking the other direction and looking out into deep space, and it was infinite. And I realized, as I had one hand on the side of space station and we were both orbiting Earth, I felt I was very connected to Earth, like it was mine. There was some ownership there, and not my hometown or my city or what I was familiar with, but the entire Earth. I felt an ownership and a kindred spirit with every part of it. You do feel this closeness to every human on Earth. You have this really distinct recognition that every single person you will ever meet, you have more in common with than you do different, no matter what. Having been part of a program that takes so many people working together and doing the right thing, and you go, wow, look what we can do when we focus on that majority of us that are alike, that have a common dream. No matter where we grow up, everybody looks up at the sky and says, what else is out there?
If you want another look at any of the stories you saw today, you can always find them on YouTube and Facebook. You'll also find lots of other great features on a variety of NASA topics, so look around. Now, if you're looking for good conversation about human spaceflight, check out Houston, We Have a Podcast. It's our weekly show talking to folks involved in all areas of space exploration. Today, we give the floor to a panel of college students interning at NASA centers around the country to hear how they got the jobs and some of the cool projects they've been working on to benefit themselves and the nation's space exploration effort. Go to nasa.gov/podcasts for this week's episode, all the previous episodes too, and the full library of all NASA podcasts, which are also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and SoundCloud.